Pablo and the gentle giant in the sun-drenched village of Solera. Nestled between olive groves and dusty hills, lived Pablo. Pablo wasn't he, like the other boys who practiced with wooden swords or dreamed of taming wild horses. Pablo dreamed of the corrida, the bull ring, but Pablo was small, very small. His Montera Matador's hat slipped over his eyes, and his tiny capote cape looked like a bright red handkerchief. The other children teased him. Pablo the Pea, they'd call. You'd get blown away by a bull's sneeze. Even the old bull, Tormentor Storm, who grazed peacefully in Don Esteban's field, seemed like a mountain compared to him. But Pablo had a secret. He wasn't afraid of size. He was fascinated by movement, by grace, by the silent conversation between matador and bull. He spent hours watching the real matadors practice, not the flashy passes, but the quiet moments, the way they stood calm, the gentle flick of the wrist that guided, not challenged. He practiced in his tiny courtyard with a broomstick and a scrap of red cloth, moving with surprising lightness and focus. One hot afternoon, a commotion erupted near Don Esteban's field. Tormentor, usually as gentle as a lamb, had gotten spooked by a runaway firecracker from the village festival. The old bull was confused and frightened, snorting and pawing the ground near the edge of the field, dangerously close to the path where little Rosa and her baby brother were walking home. Panic rippled through the villages. Men grabbed pitchforks, shouting. Women pulled children inside. Tormentor lowered his head, his big, dark eyes wide with fear, not anger. He wasn't charging, but he was trapped between the stone wall and the path, and his confusion made him unpredictable. Just then, a small figure darted past the grown-ups. It was Pablo, clutching his tiny red scrap of cloth, his practice muleta. "Wait," he cried, his voice surprisingly steady. "He's scared, not mean. Pablo, get back." Don Esteban yelled, his face pale. "You're too small." But Pablo didn't stop. He walked slowly, calmly, towards the agitated bull. He remembered everything he'd practiced. Stand tall as he could. Move smoothly, show no fear. He held out his little red cloth, not waving it aggressively, but letting it hang gently, like a quiet invitation. Tormentor snorted, stamping a huge hoof. Dust puffed around his legs. Pablo's heart hammered like a drum, but he kept his eyes soft, fixed on the bulls, not on the sharp horns. He took another step, then another. "Easy, Tormentor," Pablo whispered, his voice barely carrying over the bull's heavy breathing. "It's just me, Pablo. Remember, I bring you apples sometimes." He took a slow, deliberate step to the side, letting the red cloth drift gently with him. It wasn't a challenge. It was a path. Tormentor blinked. The frantic energy seemed to drain from him, replaced by confusion. This small creature wasn't shouting or waving sticks. It was calm. It smelled faintly of apples and dust. He watched the red cloth move, not threateningly, but like a leaf on a breeze. Pablo saw the change. He took another step sideways, guiding Tormentor away from the path, towards the open gate of the field. He moved with quiet confidence, his small frame radiating a stillness that seemed to soothe the giant beast. Step by gentle step, the red cloth leading the way, Tormentor followed, his head lowering, his snorts becoming softer grunts. The villagers watched, breathless, as the smallest boy in Solara led the great confused bull safely back through the gate and into the center of the field. Pablo gave one last gentle flick of his tiny cape, then stood very still. Tormentor stopped, looked at Pablo for a long moment, then ambled over to his favorite shady spot under the old oak tree and lay down with a deep, rumbling sigh. Silence fell, then erupted into cheers. Don Esteban rushed forward, tears in his eyes, and swept Pablo into a huge hug. Brave Pablo. You saved them, you saved Tormentor. The children who once called him Pablo, the pea stared in awe. Rosa ran over, holding her baby brother. Thank you, Pablo. Pablo, his cheeks flushed but his eyes shining, just nodded. He looked at Tormentor, peacefully chewing his cud, and knew his bravery wasn't about being big or flashy. It was about understanding, calmness, and using his heart instead of his size. From that day on, in Solara, they didn't call him Pablo the Pea. They called him Pablo el Valente, Pablo the Brave. And sometimes, on quiet afternoons, you'd see the small Matador sitting under the oak tree, sharing an apple with the gentle giant bull. Their unlikely friendship a quiet testament to the courage found in kindness and calm. The real bullfight, Pablo knew, wasn't about conquering, but about connection, and that was a victory any size could win.